Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird, and this is Blackbird's Brew. Happy Tuesday. On Tuesdays, if you've been following the channel, we discuss challenges of some sort that are specific to pagans, Wiccans, and witches. This is very specific to anyone who practices witchcraft, regardless of the tradition. And that, of course, is the issue of, I don't have any tools. What do I do? Now, there's a wide variety of reasons why we might have tools. Maybe you are just starting out, and you're not sure what you need to get, what purpose it would serve, why you would get it, what's helpful, what's not. Everything looks so expensive, and you're just not quite ready to make that material investment. That's one reason. Another reason is you're flat broke. I mean, a lot of us are. The past year and a half has not done most people's finances any good whatsoever. And so it's a little harder, when you're needing to focus on, making sure you pay the rent, the mortgage, making sure the electric stays on, making sure there's food on the table, clothes on your body. It's a little hard to justify getting some of the tools that would be quite useful to you in your practice. Or it might lead to you like, well, I'm just going to save up a little bit longer, make sure I have a little more of a cushion just in case, because the past year has demonstrated we don't know what's going to happen all the time, and life can change in an instant. So, financial prudence can be another reason. And a third reason can be maybe someone is really deep in the broom closet. Maybe they just don't feel comfortable. Maybe they're in a very hostile environment. It's less and less common. That is becoming more rare, thankfully. But unfortunately, some people are in a position where they are living with other people and they can't leave the situation, in which they're not going to be free to openly practice because of the hostility that's going to come from other members of that household. Or it's just the other members aren't necessarily hostile, they're just not comfortable, and you don't have a space of your own to do your stuff, and it's awkward, and essentially you're having to keep everything in the down low, and that involves not having incriminating evidence, as it were. Another reason why you might not have tools is that you could be out and about. Let's say you're going for a hike in the woods, and you come to this spot, and the energy is just amazing, and you feel moved, and you want to do something, but you don't have any of your tools on you. There's going to be occasions when we are without the ideal setup. And on these occasions, it's important to have coping skills, whether it's finding less expensive alternatives, less obvious alternatives, or learning how to discipline ourselves to use with the resources that are immediately within reach for us, and using purely mental workings as kind of a last resort. Now, that brings us to the disclaimer of this video. There is a school of thought, and it is becoming more prevalent, at least on social media, of witches who will tell you, sometimes quite proudly, that they do it all with their mind, they never use tools, they don't need them, and how wonderful and lovely is that. Now, these people fall into two categories I've noticed. There are the people who actually know what the hell they're talking about, and they understand that this has a great expenditure on your own personal energy reserves, and that it requires a lot of mental discipline, and that it's very difficult to do even when you're experienced. More so if you have practice, but it's still taking you more effort than if you had something physical to anchor you to what you are doing. And for newcomers, it could be extremely discouraging to go about those things because your mind might not be in the right headspace, and you can feel less certain about whether or not what you're doing is having any actual effect. Self-doubt is just a toxin to magical workings of any kind, and it's very common when you're new. Which is another reason why it's good to have something, even if you don't have a tool that would be more permanent at your disposal. There's those people who know what they're doing, and they do the self-care that is required for working in that fashion. There's them. They're usually the nice, pleasant people. And then there's the other people, the obnoxious people. And they never miss an opportunity to let everyone in the room know that they do it all with their minds, because they're just so powerful and so gifted and so advanced, and you get the feeling like they're expecting everyone to applaud them. have a little round of applause. Let's everybody clap to acknowledge just how special and wonderful and powerful the great Oz is. The people who do that are on one of two paths. The first path is the path towards an extreme burnout. If you are working strictly with your mind and you're one of these braggarts who in all probability is not doing the self-care and who probably isn't all that interested in deity or calling upon them, you are going to run yourself ragged right into the ground. You will feel the effects physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, any fashion in which you can feel the effects, you will. And it's not easy to recover from. Now, some people, they have to go through this process and learn the hard way because they're not going to learn any other way. But if you are not that hard-headed, please take this warning in the spirit in which it is meant as a kindly warning for you not to exhaust yourself if you don't have to. So there's the braggarts who are actually doing something, but they're wearing themselves down and they're hurting themselves. And then there's I'll just come out and say it, then there's the liars. The people who say they're great and powerful and they're doing all this stuff, but really they don't know what they're doing. They're not actually doing any of the things that they claim to do, and they're just full of shit. I'm sorry, there's not a more elegant way to put it. That's what you will encounter with that. I think, and I don't think that this is really emphasized enough, I think that the natural energies around us, all other sources of our power, of course we have our inner talents, but the natural world, the flora and fauna and the stones around us, these things, they're all to our benefit. Using them isn't wrong. It doesn't make us less skillful. It doesn't make us less talented. It doesn't make us less powerful or less knowledgeable or less experienced. It just means that we have enough sense to know that wearing ourselves down is not a good idea, and that this is a good way to avoid that without having to make a huge, huge investment in self-care. Any form of witchcraft, you're going to have to take care of your own energy and yourself in a way that a normal person would not have to do. I mean, that just goes with the territory. So by making use of the energies at our disposal within the natural world, the ambient energies of the universe, the energies of the gods when they see fit to assist us, this all goes towards keeping yourself in good condition. And another thing to think about with tools is that you might ask, what is the purpose for any tool? Not just, tools and magic, but tools in general. The tools we use in the kitchen, the tools people use in their place of business, the tools we use to get from one place to another. Why do we do that? It's to make the labor of what we are doing easier and more efficient. And so that's how I view tools. I know how to get along without them if I don't have them available or if I can't get to them, but I also know the value of using them for what they are. Ways to make things simpler, easier, and as essentially as batteries. The more you use your tools, the more energy flows in and out of them, and they get used over and over again for particular purposes. The more they are going to retain some of that energy, and you'll be able to draw upon that. And this can be very helpful when you're doing ritual and you're not necessarily 100%. You have that built-in support structure, and this is very important if you're a solitary. If you're in a coven, you can rely on your coven mates, and that can help make up for a lot of the difficulties. But of course, if you're in a coven, there's probably tools that the coven uses, so you're covered doubly there. But even if they go a little light on the tools, you're able to lean on your brothers and sisters within that coven to help buck you up when you need to. But if you're on your own, you got to make your own arrangements, and that means setting aside batteries, which is, again, how I view tools. So, enough rambling, time to get on to the tools themselves. First, the besom, aka the witch's broom. This is a miniature version. I do have a larger version, but I have dedicated that for use as a kitchen talisman, for good luck, for warding against issues in the kitchen, against cooking and baking disasters. It has its hands full. I really don't bring it out for ritual as such. This is what I use. In addition to being the size is what makes it very easy for traveling. For instance, on Saturdays when my husband and I go out to the farm, I started to bring a backpack of my supplies. That way I can just do my ritual there on the farm. This fits very nicely into the backpack. I'm able to take it from one place to another without much fuss or bother. I got it a couple of years ago at Walmart in their Halloween section, and it works really, really well. I mean, all you need is this representation, and it'll get the job done. Now, admittedly, I did feel a little silly the first time I was going around the circle and sweeping this little broom and, talking about how, with this besom I cleanse this space and all that good stuff. But once I got past the psychological hurdle and I tapped into the energy around me a little bit more, I could, feel the way it was pushing that stagnant energy out of the way so I could have a fresh space, a clean space, a space where energy was going to flow very naturally. And it worked out well. And that's really what the purpose of the besom is to clear out energy that's just kind of hanging around like old cobwebs that isn't going to be useful to you in your work. Let's see, Sunday I was discussing alternative tools with a member of Blackbird's Brew, and she said that she had actually constructed a broom out of yarn. So if you're a crafty person, you might start kind of brainstorming ways of, like, well, I don't have a dedicated besom, I don't have a miniature one, how can I make one? Another alternative that isn't glamorous, but it gets the job done, is to go to Dollar General, Dollar Tree, any of the stores like that, and just kind of get your standard issue, old-fashioned household broom. Not glamorous. You can pretty it up if you want to. I would suggest making sure that the bristles never touch the floor, because typically when you're using a broom for magical purposes, you're not really wanting it to touch the floor because you're wanting to cleanse the energy, not the dirt. For the dirt, you would use a broom that is for general household use. This does vary from some traditions do go ahead and they sweep that and they get both the dirt and the stagnant energy, but not always. I personally prefer to reserve my besom for strictly magical purposes, and you may too. That's a choice you have to make on your own. But yeah, just getting a cheap broom, it'll get the job done. You can save your money for something that's more decorative. You could also, around autumn when those cinnamon brooms come out, you can use that. Use your imagination, be open to possibilities. Let's see, so brooms. Now, I'm surrounded by all my tools, so bear with me here. Another tool I use, this is not standard issue in Wiccan practice, but I have a thing for keys. I use this key when I am first inviting the elemental energies into the circle, right before I cast it. This is not when I am calling quarters, this is a step before that. And when I'm essentially using this key is as a reference for unlocking those energies. If you have a key like this, you can certainly dedicate it for altar use. Again, this is not standard issue, although you will find the use of keys fairly commonplace amongst worshippers of Hecate. And of course, they have their own customs and traditions with that. This is a me thing, not a standard issue thing. But if it's resonating with you, you might think about that. Then we have the athame, which is standard issue. Mine is a little bit different. The athames typically have black handles, but they don't have to be. That's just what happens to be traditional. It is a dull blade, and you use it essentially for casting the circle, although people who have extensive dealing with the Fae don't necessarily do that because the Fae don't like anything steel in their noses for obvious reasons. Before I had this athame, I had a simple black-handled kitchen knife. It was very inexpensive. It did what I needed to do. I just cleansed it, dedicated for the work. It worked. It's one of those things, not pretty, but it works. If you don't want to do that, you always have your index finger. If you visualize because when you're casting a circle, you're visualizing a blue light going out from your tool. And if that tool happens to be the tip of your index finger, then that's what it will flow out of. It feels kind of tingly when you do it that way if you're doing it right. And this is one of those things, if you don't have any tools or you're away from your tools, you have a built-in one. Your index finger can also be used as a substitute for the wand. This particular wand is made of selenite. I had it several years ago. At first I used it only for chakra work, Now I use it for absolutely everything. And wands are typically used for invocations and for inviting particular energies into your circle. So when you're invoking the god and the goddess, when you're calling your quarters, that sort of thing. Also handy for drawing magical symbols when you're in your circle or when you're doing spell work. Now, before I had this one, my very first wand that I used for years and I loved, it was a simple stick. There had been a rainstorm the previous night. It snapped out of the tree. I saw it the next morning. It was about yay long. It was perfect. I used it. I didn't even do anything to it. I just left it as it was. It did everything that I needed it to do. You might go out hunting after the next rainstorm, see if you can pick up a similar one. It gets the job done. Now, for use in rituals, we oftentimes have blessed holy water. We use the salt to essentially cleanse the water and use it and make it ready for magical use. That's part of what makes it the holy water. I'll explain the procedure in a different video. This one is already getting long as it is. But the vessel I use for the holy water is this. I have its companions, and when I tell you about the offering plate and the chalice in a minute, I'll tell you about that. This is what I use. It obviously works quite well. I like the fact that it has the pentacle on it. But if that is not handy for you, you can do a simple cleansing and blessing of a bowl you use absolutely every single day. This is part of my everyday dishes. It has been used for holy water in the past. Again, it's just a question of cleansing, blessing, consecrating it for the use in the circle, and it works. Now, if you're really, really in a bad way with things, and you really have nothing else available, using your hands cupped like this while in imperfect solution can still be done. It's awkward. I'm not going to lie. It's not fun if this is all you have to use. Obviously, I have done it that way. I am very happy to use a common bowl or to use my chalice for this purpose. It makes life a lot easier. But if this is what you got, this is what you got. Now, for the offering plate and beverage cup or the chalice, this is the companion to the other goblet that I use for the holy water. This I use for any offerings that I have, unless it's a hot offering. This will be, wine, beer, liquors, things of that kind. But if I am offering tea or coffee or even hot cocoa, I will use one of my mugs for my everyday dishes. Again, it's just a matter of cleansing, blessing, consecrating for the purpose. It works perfectly well. I have not gotten any sense that the gods have rejected it from this form. And I do not, as of yet, have a dedicated offering plate. So again, I go to my everyday dishes. Cleanse, bless, consecrate. It works just fine. Of course, if you don't have an offering plate, what you can do is you can simply set your offerings outside at a designated place. These are things that are nice to have. They're not absolutely essential, but it sure does make life a lot easier. But again, just look for alternatives. You have options. Now, I think we'll move on to choices for incense. Let's see. We've got... This is my censer. It's not shaped like a traditional censer because it's not meant to be, but I will carry it around. The incense smoke will come out of these various holes, and I will waft it around with this turkey feather, which I was just gifted. I saw it at the farm one day, and it was mine. And so this is what I use, and I waft it around. If you don't have a feather that was ever so conveniently donated by nature, they're fairly inexpensive where you can buy craft supplies. And if nothing else, you can use your hand and you can wave it and waft the smoke around in that way. Another option for wafting incense is this shell. I use this shell usually when I am burning sage and I'm wanting to have kind of a vessel to keep it contained. I'll use it for that. And now the incenses themselves. Oh, wait a minute. I have one last thing. This is also another incense holder. This is kind of the standard issue one. Obviously, it's meant for using the stick incenses. There's no reason why this couldn't be used for your altar. These usually just cost a couple of dollars. So If you have budgetary concerns, you're okay. Failing that, find a rock, find something that's fireproof. You can burn incense that way. Not ideal. It's worth it to spend a couple bucks and get one of these. Now for the incense themselves. We have stick incense, which I don't have any on hand at the moment. I don't use it as regularly. What I use on a daily basis is this cone incense. I got this from Walmart. And there's a variety of scents, so you need to just have your correspondences in mind so that you can select scents for purposes you use most often and things that are suitable for general purposes. I use that. I haven't really noticed a difference in effectiveness when it comes to different forms of incense. It's more so of what's available to you, what's within your budget, and what's handy. If it's incense, it's incense. It's kind of like salt. You know, do you use the white salt or the sea salt or the pink Himalayan? And I'm over here thinking salt is salt. It will perform and function the way that salt does. Other to do with incense, we also have our sage bundle. This one I've been, as you can tell, working my way through. A lot of people like to use it for cleansings. It's kind of a cannonball of cleansers. I would like to let people know that it is by no means your only option if you are needing to cleanse or banish unwanted energies from your space or from yourself. What I often like to use instead is Palo Santo, and you can tell this is wood. You can also tell I've been working on it for a while. The advantage with Palo Santo is that not only will it rid your space of energies you don't want, it will actually convert anything that is lingering into a more beneficial kind of energy. So that's worthwhile keeping in mind. And once more, the form that the incense takes doesn't really seem to matter, at least not in my experience. It's more important just to have it in general. And thankfully, a lot of incense is not expensive. Now, on to things that burn. Candles. You can get gorgeous, absolutely stunning carved candles in a wide variety of images. Or you could do what I do and for your everyday purposes resort to these simple white tea lights. They work just as well. I always keep white in stock because white can be used as a substitute for any color, because if you're familiar with color theory, white is all the colors combined. So any color you might need, you can find it within the white. I know that's a little counterintuitive, but don't take it up with me. Take it up with Mother Nature. She's the one who designed how light spectrums work, so you will have to take any confusion or complaints to her. I really do favor using tea lights on a daily basis. They burn a little bit quicker. If you're doing candle spells, they'll get the job done a lot faster. Another alternative, especially if you're needing to get something done in a little bit of a hurry, is to get birthday candles. They're cheap, they're everywhere. You can get them in white, you can get them in a lot of colors. And they burn very, very, very quickly. So if you're wanting to get something done and you know you're going to have to head out of the house pretty soon, you're not going to be able to keep an eye on the candle as it burns down, that is absolutely a solution that you have available to you. Now then, from there, I think we will go to the mortar and pestle. This is usually used to crush up your herbs and so forth for your spell work. It's a nice thing to have. You don't absolutely have to have it. I find it handy. I like to keep it close by on the altar. If you don't have one, because some of those can be pricey, especially if you get bigger ones, if absolute worst comes to worst and you're needing to crush something, 2 rocks. Now, obviously, if you're going to be ingesting what you're doing, I don't recommend this because you don't know what kind of anything is on those rocks. But if this is not something you're going to be drinking or eating, you can find a flat rock, sprinkle your herbs on there, find another rock, and just crush them until you're satisfied, and that can be a solution. Very low tech, and again, these are not glamorous solutions, but they are cheap solutions. And from there, I think we need to go into the business of our cauldrons. As you can tell, I favor a small one because, for one, I like to keep it on my altar. Some people are lucky and have really gigantic ones, but as of yet, I do not. Cauldrons, of course, can be used for brewing mixtures of whatever kind, or they can also be used as a fire-safe place for you to burn things. There's a lot of spells where you burn a piece of paper or you burn an object. This is a safe way to do it. With the cast iron, that flame is going nowhere. And if you want to use it for its brewing capabilities, you can put it over an open flame. This was not too terribly expensive. Obviously, it does cost a bit. But if you don't, or you can't spend money on a little, even a small cauldron like that for right now, for the purpose of burning things, any fireproof safe dish will serve that purpose. And if you're wanting to brew, you have the option of using a crock pot. I use this extensively. I don't use it quite so much during the hot months because right now I'm trying really hard not to add heat to the house. But this is a little crock pot. I use it exclusively for magical workings, and it does what I need it to do, and that way I can keep my other cauldron strictly for burning purposes. However, if you do not have a smaller crock pot like this, or you can't spare the space, you always have a saucepan. Before using the saucepan, if it's not specifically dedicated to your magical workings, I would suggest doing a cleanse, blessing, and consecration, so it's used for that purpose and you know what you're doing with it. And if you don't even have a saucepan, then you are probably having bigger issues than the best way to do your potions. So you might want to deal with those issues before moving on to other things. Let's see. Now, we also have the symbol of the Pentacle, which you will want to have that somewhere on your altar. This is made of stainless steel. I got it a couple of years back. It's very handy. Another alternative, if you can't find one like this, you can carve one out of wood. Some people form it out of clay. In fact, that used to be quite customary in the days when it was a little bit dangerous to be known as a witch. And the clay can be destroyed very quickly if unfriendly eyes came wandering around. But in this modern age, most of us are pretty safe, and so I have this one. Alternatively, you could have a necklace with a pentacle, such as what I'm wearing here. You can just place it on the altar or wear it on your person. That works. Or you could go even more low-tech and you could draw a picture of a pentacle. An image of a pentacle is a pentacle. So if you have paper, pens, or crayons, or markers, or something to write with, you can get that done. And, you know, it's, again, not glamorous, not a permanent solution, but as you're working your way through, or if you're just kind of making do in a pinch, these are solutions that will work. Then we have altar statues. I'm sure you've seen the really gorgeous ones on Pinterest that are bronze, detailed, amazing. And I'm sure you've probably also noticed the price tag on those. That's the reason why I'm not about to show you them. They are on my to-get list, but it's just not a right now type of thing. These are the altar statues that I've been using for the past couple of years. You know, the masculine and the feminine. If you don't have statues of any kind, you can use designated candlestick holders to represent the god and the goddess, or different colored candles. Any kind of objects or image or drawing that represents the masculine and the feminine to have the balance of those energies, that'll work really well. And if all else really fails, you can visualize them in front of you. But again, that's one more thing for your brain to do. So if you can have even a very humble, very modest image that represents the idea of the god and the goddess, you're probably better off with that. Let's see. Taking a look at all my tools, making sure I'm not skipping over anything. If you have a strong alignment with a particular animal totem, for instance, my craft name, the last name is Blackbird, so I have images of blackbirds, common blackbird, crow, and the raven. These animals are all very important to me in my practice. They're important with deities that I work with on a regular basis, so I like to keep images of those on the altar as a sign of respect and also to call those energies to me. They can be nice little figurines like this. It's got a little bit of detail. You can see the repair job that I unfortunately had to do. Had a little tumble, but it's okay now. This is a little bit more expensive. I mean, it's not too much. I think I paid $10, $15 for it a few years ago. But still, you don't always have an extra $10, $15 for something like that. And of course, with larger figurines, that's going to cost more. Also, charms. This is sold at my local witch shop. It costs a few dollars. And I keep its image on there. That's another alternative. This is also handy to keep in your pocket. So if you're traveling with you and you're going to be outside and you might find a spot where you want to do something, having this in your pocket can at least be one tool you have at your disposal. And for going the really cheap route, here's another Halloween decoration courtesy of Walmart, my little Blackbird. I've had it for ages and ages. It's always on my altar, never leaves it. And it works just fine. I think it cost $2, so it's not a big investment. And if you don't have any of these at your disposal, but you want to have a representation of that animal energy, a picture of some kind, maybe an embroidery project, whatever you have at your disposal, you can absolutely use that. And again, it's less stuff for your brain to keep juggling in your head. So that brings us to the end of our tools. All that remains, which isn't really a tool. I suppose you could consider it a tool, but I wouldn't really describe it as a tool, is the Grimoire, or your Book of Shadows. This is my my one that I use for all of my important stuff. My manner of casting a circle, the way I call the quarters, standard prayers I issue to the deities I work with, certain correspondences, certain prayers that I use, certain spells, things I know I'm going to use again and again and again, and I want to keep at my fingertips all in one place all of the time. And it is also a nice portable size. It's leather. It's nice. It costs a little bit of money, but the truth is that if you picked up a journal that you like the cover of at Dollar General or wherever you go, that'll do just as well. Just make sure you use it exclusively for magical purposes, and it will work just fine. And if you can't find a little journal that you like, a spiral notebook will work. Again, this isn't something to put your grocery list in. If you're going to use it for magical notes, use it for just magical notes. This one actually I've been using for our daily forecast notes, all the stuff. This is where I write everything down first before I type up what I have to say about it and gather the images for it. And it's been extremely useful to me. So just because something looks ordinary doesn't mean it can't be put to magical use. Of course, also, we live in modern times, so we could use tablets. Some people are able to keep a lot of their stuff on the tablet. It's a convenient storage device. It does have the disadvantage of running out of batteries, but for most of the time, as long as you keep an eye on your power source and where it's at, it can be a very useful tool during ritual. And of course, it's travel size. You can easily take it with you. So if you're going out to the woods, if you have a fully charged tablet, you can have your entire ritual out there taken care of. And because it has its own light, you'll be able to see even if you're working mostly in the dark. One last thing about our grimoires, our magical notebooks, and so on, is a question that I think is worth considering from time to time. And it's asking yourself the question, if I don't have any of my notes at my disposal, do I still know how to cast a circle? Do I know how to invoke the gods? Do I know how to call the quarters? Do I know how to conduct a basic ritual? Do I understand the progression of why they're structured that way? Do I have a few spells memorized that I can use for, kind of a broad spectrum of purposes that I know just off the top of my head? Do I know certain chants that are helpful to me? Do I know certain prayers? You can see where this is going. It's essentially, if for whatever reason you're cut off from both your supplies and your notes, and for whatever reason you can't get on the internet or you can't get to your library, let's say there's been a house fire and you lost all your stuff, and all you can do is just make do with what you know here. Do you know enough in order to be able to cope? And this is an important thing because we are so spoiled. We can absolutely look up anything we want to on the internet. We can order books on any subject we can imagine. We have access to videos where people go more into depth in these topics and also go into their own personal experience with these things. But what happens if we are cut off from that? And choose your reason, whatever, and made-up scenario there is, you know, think of it as a test even. Do you know your stuff well enough to where you could cope? You could at least do the basics. You know how you could do the full moon. You know how you would do a Sabbat. You know how you would do a daily devotional, that sort of thing. It's worth considering because that's the information that it would be very prudent to commit to memory. Yeah, and I understand. I mean, for all those people out there who have a lot of difficulty memorizing things, I'm right there with you. I would rather have a short pencil and a notebook than a long memory, but there are certain things that you need to just know. The real source of a witch's power, beyond her innate abilities, or his innate abilities, it is knowledge, and knowing how to use that knowledge. And part of that is what we've demonstrated here, finding alternatives when we don't have ideal conditions in which to work. It's knowing how to do without all of our accoutrements if push really comes to shove, and knowing how to take care of ourselves afterwards. But, do we know our stuff? Can we cope on our own if we really had to? Just something to think about in the midst of all of this. I hope this has been helpful to newcomers. I hope this has been helpful to people who are struggling with gathering their tools and have budget concerns. I hope I've presented some viable and practical alternatives for you. I hope I've directed you towards some relatively inexpensive options, and I hope I've provided some ideas that cost no money whatsoever. And for the brand new speakers amongst us, I hope I've broken things down in such a way that it doesn't feel too intimidating, that you are able to envision yourself being able to do these things. So leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you have other alternatives that I failed to mention in this particular video, please let me know what they were. I'm trying to keep a running list of alternatives and substitutes that whenever someone within Blackbird's Brew has an issue and they don't have what they need right at hand, that there's a handy-dandy list available that I can say, oh, okay, you don't have this. So here's a few ideas that other people have found have worked well for them. I'd love to add new ideas to the list because you never know. You never know when you might have a sudden change of circumstances and you are having to make do and mend. So I would welcome any suggestions on that score. Thank you for staying with me till the end of this video. I know it's a long one. I apologize for that. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you in the next video. Bye.